both did the same error on the opposite side of things. You were too safe, and I swing for the fences too much on those last guys in May and June. So maybe if we put our heads together, we can figure this.
We can figure this out, Eric.
It's a really difficult concept, 18th round. It's almost here. Hot best ball summer of 2025. That still feels weird to say. 2025 best ball year. Well, what are we on? Best ball mania 6. I cannot believe how far we have come. But that's also a big part of the purpose of what we're going to talk about here today on Legendary Sickos. I'm Eric Bindford. This is, of course, Pat Carrain. And since Best Ball Mania, DraftKings, Drafter, all FFPC, all these tournaments are going to be out here very, very soon. We're about a week away from the NFL draft as we record this. It's kind of the perfect time to, in a week, we're going to dive in, right? Pat, you know this. Everybody's got to get in those first BBM drafts, get those crazy, sick ADP values. We're going to be debating every player.
This is all going to be us in there.
I know.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Let's this is our show, so we might as well derail it.
We're already derailed. Sorry.
Yes. We go in, we do this exactly what you said. We go in and we all say, the ADP's wrong at the start, right? Because they preload it and everything. But then it's all of us who know specifically which guys are going to be
we're there
wrong.
to get. Yeah.
And then I never end up getting those guys. So I'm like,
I know, because I'm like, well, I couldn't possibly reach 24 picks for this guy that I'm here specifically to draft.
The other one was, I can't remember who it was, like 2 years ago. So a lot of the rookies may have no ADP, and that's a large part of what we're talking about. Is like the rookies come in after the draft, the ADP's wrong on the rookies that got good landing spots or bad. And I forget who it was that I got in like.
And we're talking about like this year. I would say like imagine, so Dane Brugler had a mock where they took Ollie Gordon, I think, in the 4th, and they didn't draft another running back. But it's like that would be an example right there. But it could also be something like it's that, but like Taj Brooks or Jarquez Hunter or one of these guys who like literally goes undrafted in a lot of drafts. That's fun. It's fun to try to price those guys on the fly.
But we all go in and play the game of chicken with it's all of us who are all trying to. There's 12 of us in a draft trying to do the same thing, and you're all like, okay. Are you taking him in the 15th, 15th, 16th, 17th, whatever? And I think like one of my most liked best ball screenshots ever was like one of those where I want to say it was the year of Sky Moore, rookie year.
Oh, wow.
Sky Moore. I got in a non mega sicko room. I got him in the last round that year. You post that on Twitter and it's like, oh, everybody stop drafting. Eric's got the winner or whatever. And
he's got the best price on Sky Moore.
I got the best Sky Moore team in all of best ball. I went back and looked, and I finished like 11th in my file. So it is silly. It is very silly what we do, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sums up the whole enterprise right there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what we're about to do, right? We're about to go in and oh my God, whatever team took Taj Brooks, we didn't expect this to happen. He has no ADP on day 1. We got to go in and try to scoop up some of that Taj Brooks. Then we're going to transition into all of our player takes and all of our team takes and debating what's the right ADP on all of these guys. And as we should, but it's easy to lose sight of the how do we want to construct our rosters, right? Is this week 17 thing we've been talking about for 4 years now? Is it still important? Is it the same? Has it changed how we implement it? All this different kind of stuff. The market has changed so much. How are we reacting to all of that? So we're going to spend a little bit of time here today, kind of going almost like going back through, right? Like retaking the course for our tournament tactics, our strategies, and how we put together best ball teams. And I kind of wanted to start with the week 17 thing, actually, because I think it's one that after we kind of not conquered that frontier, but a few years ago, everybody started all the money's paid out here. That's kind of when the young guys are better. If we've seen almost every year some game or multiple just explodes, and that's what wins everybody all the money. And so I think we've, particularly last year, just kind of like took it for granted and just said, yeah, it is what it is. Week 17 correlated or whatever. Have you spent any more time kind of thinking about that concept in has it changed for you? Is it really just the same, when we check the box and move on? Or have you been thinking about it, like how to take advantage of not just week 17, I guess, but like the late season stuff in any different ways heading into this year?
I think for me, it's probably just like a little bit leaning more into stacking than maybe the week 17 bringbacks, which I think are still good, but in some ways, like if I am doing the week 17 bringbacks, it's I'm also interested in double bringbacks and kind of turning. This is something this is not necessarily new, but I do like the idea of kind of building out correlation on the other side of a game and then adding to that correlation so that you're actually starting to um, build a game stack of that game, but then also kind of like building in some redundancy to like what you're saying is going to happen. So you're like becoming a little bit less precise in terms of what you're like betting on, and
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to make a bet that like this offense is good instead of just a week 17 bring back. It's like this other offense is good, and that could be helpful for me, even if you don't have the quarterback. This group of players all getting a good game environment in week 15 or week 16, um, and part of a productive day on offense in one of those weeks could have benefits beyond the week 17 bring back. So um, that's probably the biggest thing. And then I still really like stacking without the quarterback. That's something I wrote about a couple years ago now, but I'm still pretty into that. And if anything, I feel like maybe like more into it where we just know like you want a lot of correlation. Quarterback's the most replaceable thing. I've been taking more 3 quarterback teams in the big board than I will in Best Ball Mania because I have 2 extra picks. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm kind of thinking like some of the things that I'm trying to do in the big board, I might build similar teams, but just not have that third quarterback. Um, and look, I mean, if you have like a Kyler Murray and a Justin Fields or something, let's say the Jets don't draft anybody, so Fields looks like he's starting all year. You jump in one of the early drafts, you get Fields while he's still reasonably priced. You have those 2 dudes, and it's a Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson team. Like, do you need McCarthy? Like, no. But I'm not gonna, at the end, if they drafted a Kyle Williams as their slot receiver or something, am I gonna like not take him because I don't have McCarthy? Like, absolutely not. I'm still betting on the Vikings. I'm interested in Jordan Mason. I'm interested in some of their dart throw pieces. Absolutely. Like that's I you need to generate a lot of points at once. You're gonna you're gonna need the Vikings offense to be going nuts at the end of the season because you have Jefferson. Well, if it's going nuts, you might be able to add another score because you got to fill a lot of positions with a lot of high scoring players. I still think kind of just betting on teams. The Week 17 bring back probably gets more because it's funnier. It gets like more. It's like more a bigger part of the way people remember this. But I still think like traditional stacking is probably more. It's probably better to focus on.
I actually think it's easier to explain in a funky way where you're like, well, yeah, if the Bengals score 50, the other teams who projected to throw 32 times throws 48 times. So, what is like anybody goes, oh, shoot, my guy that was going to get 6 targets gets 12. That seems pretty good. It's really easy to say that when you try to explain, particularly stacking without the quarterback, which I'm glad you brought that up because it kind of hits multiple different things in this discussion. I actually said just the other day, also 2-parter. Don't go back and look, but I promise you it exists. One of the very first videos, the summer heading into Best Ball Mania 2. So 4 years ago, one of the very first videos I did for Spike Week. This is when, like, I think we still branded it Roto Grinders because it was like my experiment from within the corporate structure. Was the power of stacking without the quarterback and how undervalued it was. And it's one of the few things that from that, like, please don't go watch it. It's a really bad video. But the advice was fine. The content was maybe not so good. It's one of the very few things, like in all of best ball, I think, that has not really been not figured out. Like obviously you're just talking about it. You figured it out. But it's unnatural to most people, and it's hard to totally understand at face value like why this is so powerful, because you have to be like, well, just betting on the offense. Quarterback points are really replaceable. I've got good quarterbacks and they're also stacked. So now I've got all these different, various outs. But when you're building the team, you're like, yeah, but I took Puka and Devontae. Shouldn't I just take Stafford? And then it's like, well, actually.
And if I don't take Stafford, isn't the team dead?
Yeah. And it's like, no, you're actually in great shape. Maybe that's not the greatest. They're very expensive, but you get the point. Last year, DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Bet on the Seahawks. Cool.
Yeah.
You already have Jaden Daniels and Baker Mayfield as your quarterbacks. Do you need Geno Smith? I'm not even saying that's the best example. I'm just saying, look at how that played out. It's like Geno just rotted away on your bench. But particularly JSN had lots of big games because you had this simultaneous bet on the player, right? We don't necessarily need to draft players that we don't love, although we talked about that last week with chaperones and all pairs and everything. But I'm drafting the player that I think is a good pick, and I'm betting on the offense. There's a lot of ways that can get there for you without the quarterback mattering for you. Like even if Geno outscores Jaden Daniels in that week, most of the time the level that he outscores him is so negligible that you need to hit is every other spot in your lineup, like you said, with massive scores. There's one position and one position only that really just never gaps the field in terms of the scoring. Like maybe a rare Jalen Hurts or Allen or Lamar week or something. Jaden Daniels can do it, but what we're also saying, draft those guys. Draft those guys. You then what is how many times is Stafford going to outscore Josh Allen to such a significant degree? Like even if Puka has a good game, how many times have we seen Puka and Kupp, and the Rams score points and Matthew Stafford's just like, whatever. Like I don't really care if I have him at all. And so
it almost seems every time that they go off, he just doesn't do anything. I don't know what's going on there.
He's okay. He throws for 275 and 3, but it's only to those two guys. So like I just get everything that he brought to me with the other guys, and I find a higher scoring quarterback elsewhere that's likely running for touchdowns, which Matthew Stafford is not doing. But the stacking without the quarterback thing like hits a lot of these different kind of pillars where it's actually really valuable in week 17 because you give yourself outs to multiple different games and multiple different offenses going off without giving up too many spots to the quarterback position, which we don't generally want to do. Whether it's 2 or 3, we don't want to go more. I much prefer 2 because of this. Like I want to get as many shots on goal at running back, wide receiver, tight end, flex. And how do I do that while still, like you said, betting on offenses, betting on game environments in week 17? It's like, yeah, instead of taking my favorite 16th round pick, let's toss Marvin Mims onto this Jamar Chase, Cortland Sutton, Chase Brown team. And the next thing you know, like, I don't know, were you even right about Marvin Mims? Like, I don't know, but he was in the best game and he ended up being in the best game in week 17, catches a couple long touchdowns. And now you just through that sheer correlation, even though you don't have Bo Nix, you hit the stone cold nuts and you might've won $1 million or multiple millions of dollars.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like we're used to stacking primarily coming from like DFS and stuff. So like it would be strange to, have a team that has Chase and Higgins and doesn't have Burrow. Like that would be bad. Generally. So I think it's like, man, I didn't get Burrow on this team. Like I'm kind of screwed. But like I have a team that's got Chase and Higgins and Hurts because I got sniped on Burrow. But I think I did.
It's funny, by the way,
Devonta or something.
The fact that that's the order now is really, really funny when you think about
it. I know. No, I can't have. Anyway, what did I do? maybe I did Devonta. Maybe I'd Hurts Devonta 4 or 5. But even if I didn't, it doesn't matter. I'm like, Hurts will cover Burrow even if he goes off, probably. Like, and again, like not cover, like maybe Burrow outscores him, but he keeps me like within striking distance. And then the other thing is that what more typically I would have done there is just draft a quarterback later and probably take 3, and take some guys with upside. So, I'm interested in a May always, but like a Fields,
Mm-hmm.
certainly a Kyler. Like some of my teams are actually like, I think pretty sure I know for sure I've done with one of them, but I think I've done with both Chase and Higgins, McBride, Kyler stuff. So it's like I'm good. Like I've got upside at quarterback, and I'm actually in a position where these guys can ping pong weeks, right? That's one of the things we like to talk about.
Oh yeah,
So
maybe he's
it's
gonna
just a
bring it
Chase
up.
Alpha game, you know?
Yep.
And being invested in the Bengals has, like last year was something you really wanted to be doing, but then, Burrow isn't the piece Burrow isn't the guy you need. And maybe there isn't a guy you need at quarterback. That's another
And
part. The
there,
cheaper you pay, the more expensive it is when you're like, oh my God, you have to complete this stack. It's like, I don't know if the guy costs a 5th round pick, do I?
it's I think quarterback. We could probably talk for hours about like the quarterback and the stacking part of it, because I think it's the most maybe misplayed part of the game, and that's why the stacking without the quarterback thing has so much value. Is people just can't help but always attach the quarterback when especially when you, like you said, you took Chase and Higgins. I'm not saying never stack Burrow with Chase and Higgins. I'm saying if it doesn't happen, like you're not dead. Like you said, you can replace. What if so even Burrow scores? If I remember correctly, when Liam won Best Ball Mania, it was Chase, and that season, to your point about ping ponging, was the peak ping pong Bengals. It's always the goddamn Bengals because the defense is just so goddamn bad,
Yeah,
and the
and they
passing
pass.
and the
And they
passing
pass.
game is so awesome. And it's probably going to be the same shit again this year, by the way. Uh, yeah.
I
So
know. I need more Bengals.
yeah, we just got to draft it. I think the lesson that we could have just wrapped this up in 5 minutes and was just stack the Bengals and move on. But it was like I'm gonna screw it up, right? But there's an article from 2022 or whatever it was on Spike Week that was like they didn't actually necessarily like pay off. Like I don't think T paid off his price, whatever we would like to define that as. Like he was fine, and T dudded big time in week 17. So you're like, my 3rd round wide receiver sucked in week 17, and he was just like fine as a pick all season. Why is that good? Well, precisely that. Jamar Chase and T had some big games throughout the year. Chase ended up being the better pick, and the guy who went for 50 in
Yeah.
week 17. But Chase didn't do so much in week 16, and it was T's turn, right? T goes for
Right.
40 in week 16. And it's like, how did you get Jamar Chase was not popular in the Best Ball Mania finals that year. How did you get him there? Well, you bet on the right offense, and you just said, I don't know how it's going to shake out, but the Bengals are going to score a lot of going to score a lot of points. Maybe it's both in some weeks. Maybe it's one this week and one the next week, and that's what happened. And it's like this way to manufacture leverage, which we've talked a lot about. It's a way to bet on multiple offenses with diversifying your bets within a singular team is like, so I can get the Bengals and the Dolphins and the Patriots and the Chargers. Like I can make bets on all of those teams, and maybe a couple of them play together, like the couple of them play each other or what have you. Like you can have all these outs to not just needing like that one game. When we build it from the start and we say, all right, I took this guy and this guy, got to stack it with that quarterback, got to get the most expensive bring back on the other team. You've just said, I got one out in week 17 to win this whole thing,
Right.
or one out throughout the course of the playoffs. I mean, throughout the whole fantasy playoffs, which is you reiterated last week. It's 3 different individual tournaments. You'd never play the same expensive guys every single week in DFS and expect to win the tournament every single week. And so we give ourselves those outs to be like, look, yeah, Chase had a bad game this week, and every other Chase team died. And you know how I got through? Because I got these 3 other offenses, right? I got the Cardinals, and I got the Patriots, and I got the Dolphins. And they had big games that week. And the other Chase teams had Chase and Higgins and Burrow and whoever the expensive guy that they play. And it's like, but I diversified and I was able to to maneuver around some bad games from other pieces that maybe I thought I was going to need during the draft, but I didn't end up needing.
Right, without having to just be right on every player. Yeah, that's the other part. I mean, the best thing to do would just be to be right on every player.
Yeah, of course,
but that's hard.
But we know, it's like absolutely impossible. We look back at like even yours, like you had Saquon, right? That not
Saquon.
You had Giants Saquon, who was just like a nothing burger, really. Like nobody remembers him in that season. Nobody remembers him that he was on your team.
He was productive that year, but he didn't go off in the final.
Right, but he also wasn't the season was not defined by Saquon Barkley by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he was.
You weren't mad you had him, but you weren't like, thank God I have Saquon on this team.
Eckler was the guy that I needed in the first round. Yeah, and the season wasn't defined by him either because it was defined by Justin Jefferson, who dudded in week 17, and you couldn't have both, and so that ended up being a weird leverage point for me. It's the Packers, yeah.
What's his name? Jair. He can't get open against Jair Alexander. Remember?
Thanks, Jair.
Yeah, you need a Jair jersey.
Maybe that's actually a jersey. Yeah, that's why Eckler's score was so important. But Eckler is the man. Yeah, I mean so I guess this is one thing I think that the big board's a nice reminder of, and all the pre-draft stuff is that if you just could like go in and be like, what advantage, what button do I want to hit? What lever do I want to pull? It's the completely mispriced player. That's the one I would give me, a completely mispriced player. That's what I would prefer. And look at last year, Chase Brown was kind of one of the guys from the big boy. He was, kind of like let me go find my Chase Brown teams because he was completely mispriced in the big board. And I mean, it's mispriced in Best Ball Mania too, but you're kind of like this thin outcome to actually materialize did materialize. He's the guy for the Bengals, just has the whole backfield down the stretch. And so you're kind of, ideally you would find something like that, is like a guy who just was not being drafted like he had any real shot of like kind of having a backfield to himself, and then emerges as a star. I just did Davis Maddox final stream. He's streaming all 150 of his big boards. We did the draft and we looked. I mean, truly. Pete told him not to do it, and and he says Davis does not seem happy that he did do it. So,
shocker.
Yeah. So, but Davis and we looked at his first team that he drafted, and he had Bashal Tutin as his last pick. So who knows if Bashal Tutin will actually do anything, but certainly you're excited about getting him in round 20 instead of round 11 or whatever. And to me, like, in the big board, you can't stack like you would in Best Ball Mania. In the summer, we're going to be stacking way more than we were able to in February, because we just know so much more about like who's on the teams. We actually have the schedule, all of it. And you don't have that's limited, but like, man, you have the ability to potentially capture some huge values. And so I'd rather like look for that as opposed to like just like making sure I'm stacked no matter what. Like if you give me the choice between one of these like dust ball like Andre Yoshivas or like Torrey Horton.
Hey,
sorry.
I like, but Yoshi is the worst player ever to provide a shitload of usable weeks in best ball. I felt like I was supposed to win a lot more money than I did last year, because the dude would get 2 targets a game and catch a touchdown every week and 10 points. Cool, go into that boy. Yeah, boy, Yoshi, you're not going to be in the NFL in 2 years, but thank you for the touchdowns.
Well, I mean, it's like in August, I'm way more likely to take a Yoshivas because I'm like, what do I already bet on the Bengals. Everyone's been kind of priced up, like the market's sort of efficiently pricing in more of the upside. And so now I need to lean into the edges that aren't so player focused. They're more like structural, or, structural in the sense of like, a team hitting together. So the further we get, basically the closer we get to the summer. But when I go in after after the draft, I'm going to be looking for all the mispriced players. You know, if that means I don't get like a stack, okay. You know, I'm going to beat. How do you beat the teams that were drafted in August? They're going to have advantages on you. You need to have advantages on them, and obviously stacking still matters. But I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to throw away like the primary reason to draft in May. Primary reason to draft in May is you look back and you're like, how did this team come to exist? This is crazy.
It's actually a really good point. I'm glad that you brought it up because it feels like long gone are the days where we debated when's the best time to draft and the barbell approach and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff.
Before we all
Because
got so busy that just like being able to draft that day was a gift.
yeah, you just draft like are you available? Like
Yeah.
draft. And
I might be
again,
projecting. I did just have a daughter a year ago, so
yeah, and
time is precious now.
I do not have that, but let me tell you, I relish my dog walk times when we fire up the old app, and I know where the dead spots are around my neighborhood. I've sell dead spots around my neighborhood, so I make sure that the queue is ready to roll for when I get through those spots. And I'm like walking faster. Dog wants to stop and sniff something, and I'm like, nope, can't stop here. Got to we got to keep going because I'm an auto Bryce Young or whatever here. So,
Oh man.
but like when all that started, like if you're coming in new to this, or even in the last year or two, you're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? When's the best time to draft? There's like 4,000 tournaments all summer. We just draft all summer, right? And like, well, when all of that started, when we had those debates, and it's still relevant for Best Ball Mania, but it was one Best Ball Mania, like was at that time the only tournament that was available to like, so you had to figure out, you got to draft 150 teams, and how many of them do you draft, right? May, June, July, August, early September. And so we debated all that a lot. And I think for Best Ball Mania, for the DraftKings Millie, etc., understanding like these strategies, these tournament tactics that we're talking about, like first and foremost, the reason to draft next week when it comes out is because there's mispriced players, point blank period. And then later, right, as we're over the course of the summer, we'll react to the news and things that we get, right? Some guys stock is going to tank, some guys are going to seem much better than they were, and then we're going to know final rosters. We're going to have a much better understanding of depth charts. Obviously, things are going to change. We got the Kyron and Puka stuff a couple of years ago, blah 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 blah. And so like understanding what your edge is in that given moment is actually probably a little, something that goes undervalued as well. Like next week, your edge is probably, no matter if you're using Pat's rankings or our rankings or your own brain, is like, this guy's going at pick 190 and he should be going at pick 130. And if he goes at pick 130 later in the summer, and you're right, you have some of the best teams of that player. And like, that's the point of drafting now, because you're accepting a lot of risk drafting in May. Guys get hurt. We don't really know shit about who's going to play and what the roles are like. And the August teams have a huge edge on you in that. But you have this one edge now, so you better pull that lever, because you're not going to be able to go back and pull that lever in July.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it probably even goes to like the roster construction stuff too, where I think I'm like, I'm somewhat torn on like the best way to attack the early drafts, especially this year where it is so much about the running backs that, these rookie running backs that might be really the ones who are underpriced, because the scary part about drafting early is you risk taking on zeros. And so there's some appeal to like, well, I'm going to draft, like a Yoshi Voss or that type of guy early, because otherwise I'm like, worried about taking on zeros and stuff. But at the same time, Yoshi's not spiking in ADP. Even if Higgins were to be out for a while, he'd be like a 14th round pick. So there's, I'm going to have to think a little bit more on that. Like, cause I feel pretty strongly in the summer, like the late summer. One of the things I really, really want to do is aggressively target running backs who we more recently gained clarity on. That these are the number twos. And I think this year Jordan Mason, perfect example. Yeah, just hammer Jordan Mason. Even if he jumps up, I mean, this year the market did a much better job. They were just like, no, he's like a 12th rounder now or whatever. But yeah, I mean, good. Yeah, that's good. Like it was hard. I had a hard time hammering Jordan Mason as much as I wanted in the final drafts. P. Ryan was another guy, so that one didn't
Yeah,
work. But
I
I
did
think
that
it was
too.
the right, yeah, it was the right process to get on both those guys.
Especially
Just
on
like,
DraftKings, man. I just like came the whole like I was drafting specifically to be like, give me Mason, give me P Ryan. They're not drafted
yeah,
in every draft. They're way undervalued, you know. And like you said, but that's actually good. Like there's two sides to a coin. It's like just because Mason or P Ryan didn't hit doesn't mean the process was wrong. Because look at what that process led you to with Jordan Mason. It's
and
like I
look at
know
the
he.
Chiefs. Like, imagine if he had anything left, he would have been
Oh
an
my god.
absolute smash.
I
Like
mean, we didn't
that,
have the Kareem Hunt stuff going on at the time. Like we thought P Ryan was going
right,
to be what Kareem Hunt ended up being.
right, yeah. So I think that I feel very strongly about. And there's like, you know, it's crazy because even if you only get week 16 spike week out of a running back like that, it's gigantic because you're probably the only team in the pod with it. Like that's where those running back depth charts that get late clarification, late breaking clarification, is to me like probably the biggest edge in the tournament because it's like you are unlikely to face that player in the pod once you make the pod.
There's just not that many teams with them, like relative to
Yeah,
every other
there's
player.
not that many teams. There can't be that many teams. Like 70-80% of the tournament's already been drafted, maybe more. And so that one I like really feel strongly about. And obviously you hit on a Kyron that way, which feels good, but that's just like a bonus. The
Yeah.
the goal is like a Mason or even like Jalen Warren the year before Kyron was a UDFA, was not clear that he was the number 2. At the end, it was clear he was the number 2. He hits one week, I forget it was 15 or 16, but one playoff week spike week. And like you would have been the only one with him. So that's one. And then early though, if it's early, how do we, because we're going up against those teams that are going to have like the guy we didn't know about. So you can either try to hunt for that guy, but with less information, which is bad. You're at a disadvantage. So what you're really hunting for is the guy who's going to rise on training camp hype. So it's like you kind of need to probably swing a little bit bigger. Maybe it's more like situation, like backfields. I'm thinking out loud, but I'm like, I want to improve what I do in the late rounds because I think I played it too safe last year. I was like, oh, I'll just take wide receivers with jobs because those won't be zeros. But that was just me. Like, I think maybe I capitulated too much to the late drafted teams because they're they're very likely to have an edge on me.
Yeah.
So
you knew that they had the edge and you accepted that, right? And you said, I'm not going to go chase that thing because
I want to get an
you're
edge
going to
on
do it
them.
better. But I have right. Okay. Now I'm thinking out loud. We both did the same error on the opposite side of things. You were too safe and I swing for the fences too much on those last guys in May and June. So maybe if we put our heads together, we can figure this.
We can figure this out, Eric.
It's a really difficult concept, 18th round fantasy football. But
yeah.
So you have the edge of these underpriced players. The guy that you got in the 13th, they're going to be paying several. Let's assume, right? They're going to be paying several rounds more. That's the goal. They're going to have their later round picks are just not going to be zeros, generally speaking. They're going to be stronger and they have a much better bet to be like big hits than yours do. So what kind of player do we target at the end of those drafts, in a week or in 2 weeks or whatever, knowing that, it's like we don't want to try to take a full home run swing necessarily because we're just not going to be able to hit as many home runs as frequently as the August teams are. But we also don't want to take the Yoshis and like Tim Patrick and guys like that because then we're also just conceding. You're just like almost giving away a pick to the August teams. So there's got to be like some middle ground that we can figure out that I don't know exactly what the answer is, but there's a better way to play it certainly than I.
Yeah, I mean, like I think part of it was, I'm trying to like, a guy like Scattaboo, right? And this is obviously pre-draft. We don't know where he's going to land, but like I'm really targeting him in these pre-draft tournaments in part because like I think the floor's higher. Like I can get a win where like I'm drafting a guy who eventually gets drafted in the 7th round, but I'm getting him in the 11th round or something like that. And that's kind of been more how I've thought. Like last year, that would have been my argument of like I'm gonna get CLV, but my CLV is gonna be moving up from like the 12th, 13th, 14th round into the late single digit rounds. And then I'm not even really going to try to get that much CLV in the final rounds, and I'll just add to my stacks that I have
Yeah,
already
yeah.
in place. But I don't know. That seems boring. I want to try. I want to try to get a little. I
It
wonder.
is
How about
boring.
this?
It is boring.
It is boring. How about tight end? How about we say we're gonna some of the things that you'll see happen. One of the things you'll see over the course of the summer, there will be names that get kind of like hot at tight end, and
Mhm.
they'll just like really rise up. Noah Fant, we did this with last year. It's not always gonna work, but like Jake
Theo Johnson is
Ferguson,
Theo Johnson is not a
Theo
horrible
Johnson,
example from
yeah,
last year. I know he wasn't a big hit, but it was also like I don't know if Theo Johnson's my tight end 2 or 3 by the end of the year. That's fine. That's totally fine.
yeah, yeah. So that's why maybe I'll do more 3 tight end builds and go spend that extra, like a Zach Ertz would have been the hope of a
Yeah.
guy you hit last year. Mike
Well, so then
Gesicki.
is it yeah, so is it the boring veteran tight end that we doesn't necessarily have that application? I'm not saying Zach Ertz didn't have application later in the summer, but we found better things later in the summer. But in May, like, do we take Mike Gesicki or Zach
Well,
Ertz
because what
or
you're saying, it goes to what it's a spin on my thing from last
Mhm.
year, which is that like I'm not going to try to bank CLV because I just have such poor information at this point that like hunting hunting to I'm looking okay, if I'm trying to get CLV, I'm looking to create a situation where I knew better than the market later, you know? And
Mhm.
so I was ahead of the curve on market information. But I'm getting to a point where I have such little information about who will rise that I have to be guessing because the things I would need an in with a team at a certain point,
Right. Mhm.
and I don't. So
Hmm.
maybe I do stop searching for CLV, but instead I'm just searching for points. I'm just searching for what actually matters. It's like give me points that hit my lineup in the playoff weeks. And tight end such a chaotic position, more chaotic than wide receiver, that maybe I pivot to tight end and I say, even in builds I don't need it. Even if I have Bowers and Janu, pure 2 tight end build, I'll just take a swing at third tight end and try to add some points that way.
It's interesting. Because yeah, it's definitely a spin on what you were talking about, but at the position where the how do I even say this? The like home run swing is if you whiff, it's less hurtful to you, right? I'm not calling Zach Ertz a home run swing, but I'm saying if you were to do that, right? Or Theo Johnson, if you swung for Theo Johnson and you whiffed, it's like, are the August teams 18th round tight end really gonna like? Is that the
Yeah.
burial spot? Like, no, it's not, right. It's generally the running backs, maybe occasionally a wide receiver. It's generally the running backs that pop up, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know Jordan Mason was this big of a thing, in May. So that guy, like, they're so far ahead of you. But a tight end, even if you miss, like, it's not over, and they're they're much more projectable. Right now, we didn't know Zach Ertz versus Ben Sinnott necessarily, but like I mean, Zach Ertz was going to be on the team. We knew
Right.
that.
Right.
Like we're drafting 18th round wide receivers that are like look at the list from last year. It's damning. And this is you could probably look at my fucking exposures for this. Uh,
Yeah.
like Luke McCaffrey,
Mhm.
Tez Walker, Roman
Mhm.
Wilson, Jermaine Burton. Like these are the guys we're swinging on. And I'm not even saying that those are like bad swings. I'm just saying that's the kind of thing you're getting back there at the wide receiver position. Whereas tight end is like, I know last year's a little bit funky, but it was like Colby Parkinson's the starting tight end on the Rams. Now he lost that job to Tyler Higbee, so we can discuss whether that was good. But I mean, Colby Parkinson just was making like $9 million a year. Like he's not getting cut. Zach Ertz
Right,
is just
right.
like I know what I'm getting with Zach Ertz. I know what I'm getting with some of these guys, right? And then if I
Theo
want to
Johnson was
swing,
actually one I was into, but it was, I mean, and it didn't work, but
yeah,
it's
he got routes. He was
he
running
got
routes
routes.
by the end of the year.
Part of the reason that the zeros thing is such, does really hurt you is that like you need like as many outs as possible to have these guys hit your lineup. And at tight end, a guy can hit your lineup by just catching a touchdown. So like even if you
Yeah, yeah,
have,
yeah.
you know, a guy who's in a 1B role, obviously you're not psyched about it, but you know, he could actually get you through a playoff week, not by being the guy you need, but by like scoring, by going 40 yards and a touchdown on 3 catches. That easily could be your starting tight end that week.
Can I
Got over double
can,
digit points, you know?
can I share my first drafts in BBM last year? This is embarrassing. So just understand that yeah, exactly. God damn it. I should have not had Evan Hall showing on the screen when it first loaded. So I got it sorted by date right here. So I did a May 5th for first draft, right? Trevor, like you start to scroll down this and you're like, holy shit, there's some amazing picks on here, to the point about the edge was like some of these guys are going to be mispriced, particularly some of these young guys, right, are going to be mispriced in May, at the beginning of May. But you'll see in my late picks, you're like, you know, you were a couple of shots. Like if that was Jordan Mason, if that was Tyrone Tracy, I know that that's a little bit different, but we did gain some information on Tyrone Tracy, right? If it was Bucky, if it was whatever, somebody that we gained a little bit more information on by the end. But look, you know, I know Lawrence wasn't great and then got hurt, but Baker obviously good. But like, look at it. Zach Moss, terrible. Raheem Mostert, worst running back pick on the board. Sharbs didn't really do anything. Jalen Wright didn't do anything. Kendrick Miller didn't do anything. Roshan Johnson didn't do anything. Evan Hall didn't do anything. So starting from like, I don't really regret like kind of through shot. You get, but you get
Sharbs
the point.
was
Like,
actually, yeah.
Look at all the risk. Yeah, Sharps carried this team. I think this column is the points added. Yeah, Sharps added 85 points to this team. I think he scored 85 points on this.
Yeah, all
on
of
the
his
season.
points counted. Yeah.
This shows you how many. I took so many zeros every point Zach Charbonnet scored. hit this team. I mean, I used 20 Raheem Mostert points. I didn't know he scored 20 points last season. But like that's, look at all the risk. Like these are not last round picks. Jalen Wright 141, Kendra 148, right? Roshan 189. You know, obviously Evan Hall doesn't make the team. Like there's just nothing. But then you get to the wide receivers. Again, I know Tyreek wasn't awesome, but Nico, Mike Evans, Tank Dell got hurt. Keenan, BTJ, Jalen McMillan. Like speaking of missed prices.
So
Brian
what
Thomas
pick was
Jr.,
BTJ?
BTJ 76.
73. Okay. Oh, 76.
Yeah. So I got him at 76. This is points. No, this is his ADP. Sorry, I know we need it. Yeah, points added versus points used. So I should have had it. So I used actually. I probably did use. Charbonnet had 126 points on this team. I probably did use every single Zach Charbonnet point. 0 from Jalen Wright. Right. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Kendra scored a little bit. I used 54 Roshan Johnson points on this team. Evan Hall, but like, look, Evan Hall is the type of air quotes swing. I was swinging on JT's backup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wide open in May. Who's going to be the backup to JT? Ultimately, that didn't matter. It didn't even matter if you got it. But that's kind of the point. Is not only was I wrong, Evan Hall was not the backup. It didn't fucking matter. And JT
didn't
got
matter.
hurt, and it didn't matter. But you find somebody like Nico was too cheap, right? Mike Evans ended up being too cheap. You know, I know Keenan got funny, but he turned out fine. BTJ, nice price. Jalen McMillan, absolute slam dunk home run. You know, the tight ends weren't great, but that's kind of to the point. Is couldn't I have just like, I don't know, invested something a little bit earlier in some of these running backs? Take out, you know, even if we concede Jalen Wright, Kendra Miller, whatever, like take out a couple of these running backs and take those last picks and put them down into the tight end position and just beef up that running, like, you know, just put Kamara on this team, right? Or put Ken Walker on this team, or put Joe Mixon on this team. Like that's all it needed. It wasn't going to win, but it might have friggin' advanced, right? If you just put like Joe Mixon on this team and then take a late tight end instead of Evan Hall, like that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good to me. Like that kind of thing is like look at this. Like here, Roman Wilson at pick 156, dude. Javon Baker at pick 180. I mean, fuck, Malik Washington was a air quotes good pick compared to the rest of this list, and he was useless. The list goes on and on, right? Javon Baker, Dontavian Wicks wasn't even any good, but it's like, right, Estime, I used 14 Estime points. Ty Chandler, 0. There's just so many. I know it was last year, I'm cherry picking, but this happens all the time. There's just all these zeros, and there's plenty of good. Look, this is a freaking Chase Brown team. Chase Brown, Mahomes, Fields, like there's good players on these teams, and they're just completely and utterly dead, because it's just littered with zeros, because a lot of it is these late round guys I'm just swinging and swinging and swinging on. So there's got to be some form of a middle ground that we can find, I think.
Yeah, and I think the running back early probably makes more sense in those early drafts too, especially there's one of the things that's funny about zero running back is it's sometimes more effective later in the summer when we know the depth charts a little bit better.
Yeah.
You think it would be better early in the summer, but when you have to when you can't shuffle any of the zeros, it's like if you're mining for a few big hits, but at the cost of 4 zeros, that doesn't work so well in best ball. It's much better to do that in redraft.
Yeah, redraft, swing away, take a bunch of them, cut them later.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, like things like early round tight end, early round quarterback. I do wonder if maybe those are better strategies later in the summer too. Although I like Bowers and McBride so much, I'm not going to actually practice that. But
maybe quarterback.
Yeah, but if you think about like if I just literally go like 3 tight ends to close every draft and don't take a elite tight end, and that allows me to take, Christian McCaffrey or Devon Achane or Genty at the 1-2 turn instead of Bowers, that maybe that allows me to, like, because part of the reason I'm not doing that right now is that I'm hoping to bank some like big time hits on running backs who aren't going to be. There's no information. You don't know where these guys are being drafted, and I'm mixing it up. So I'm doing a lot of this. So I'm taking Giddens, and I'm taking Harvey, and I'm taking Neal, and I'm taking all these guys, and Tootin and everybody. So I have a lot of different flavors of that type of room where I'm just like, Bowers hits, and I'll have a Bowers team with like a sick running back room. You hope you have good receivers on it, and it's like, you're good to go. And in most cases, I have a 3 quarterback room with like 3 guys in that general window that opens up around the 8th round. But when those running back values, when instead of like, taking Tootin and it works, or Giddens and it's a big hit, instead it's like you're taking Javonte Williams, but we actually know that he is a backup on the
right.
On the, like there's no chance.
Roshan, right? Oh shit,
Roshan.
Roshan, yeah. Or you're swinging on. Okay, the draft didn't shake out for the Colts. I know that someone on the Colts is going to be the RB2 and he's in the last round. It's like, but I don't know. There's 4 of them and they probably all just suck.
Yeah.
It's like, is the juice really worth the squeeze? Like is
right.
And now, I'm not saying I don't mean this, but like on that team is like Brock Bowers plus being forced into 2 Evan Hall swings or Trace, if you liked Trey Sermon, or you liked who was the other, Tyler Goodson, right? If you liked one of those guys, is it worth? You can still get your Brock Bowers. We got all summer, and I'm not saying never, ever, ever, but I do think I want to be cognizant of specifically those later guys, and I don't want to take, because these guys aren't chaperones, right? Like the last round guy, like the chaperone concept that we talked about, these last round like wide receivers and stuff are not chaperones. They're just like most likely zeros.
No, they're not chaperone. This is like when a 6-year-old is babysitting.
Yes.
Like they're better than the toddler.
Your neighbor's daughter is just old enough to like, open the fridge and use the telephone. So they're like, yeah, sure. Come on over. You watch the baby, and you're like,
you watch a baby. Yeah. What could go wrong?
What could
That's
possibly go
that's
wrong?
the level of chaperones we're getting in the 20th, 18th, and 20th round. It's like
So
it's not these
they're
should
technically
not be
attempting.
chaperoning anyone.
They're attempting to take the kids on the school field trip, but it's probably not going to
Yeah.
go very well.
The more you
So-
need them to do, the worse it gets for you.
Yes, that's perfect. That is so perfect. Expect 0, right? So expect 0 from these, and if
You
you need
might even want someone to chaperone them,
yeah,
frankly.
yeah. So now you took a 17th rounder to chaperone your 18th, who's chaperoning your 7th round pick. Right? You needed a Matthew Golden chaperone, so you took a dude in the 17th. Now you need an 18th rounder to help out. You know, it's like that's to our chaperone conversation. Like that's how not to do that concept, right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to do that, but without any information, you know, in May and frankly June, we don't get information, like true information, actionable information till like
Till late July.
August.
It's really August. It's like, and then it comes pouring in, but it's late July and August when we get it.
Yeah, we're drinking from a fire hose in August, and there's like a slow ramp up of like some little rumblings in July, like early to mid July, where like teams are like getting from workouts out there. We obviously get the OTAs and camp and all that, but most of that shit is just like useless. We need real training camp and preseason games, right, to gain real information. And so we don't get that until later. So how do I counterbalance this? Like I'm still trying to win the best ball tournament, right? So like that's why I don't want to draft these losers who like at best are just running routes and getting 2 targets. And I'm like, I can convince myself, what if he catches 2 touchdowns? It's like, yeah, no shit. He's got 4 career touchdowns. If he catches 2 in week 17, go buy a fucking lottery ticket. But I also, so I need the upside.
What if?
That's yeah, exactly. I always like that. Like, but if he just catches the touchdown, it's like, well, yes, that's true. But I could say that about any player of all time.
Yeah.
So like, but I don't want to. You know, I don't want to keep swinging too much and be overconfident in any one player, right? Like I felt good about Evan Hall being the backup. Actually, wrong, way overconfident, totally wrong. And then again, even when you're right, Roshan Johnson is the backup, and it's like he's still useless. He doesn't even score any points for you. So those guys are just going to be so bad. How do I shield against that lack of information?
I think. As I'm thinking through it, so to me, it's like Bowers, McBride, and Kittle in this year give you an edge on that's like an edge throughout the entire life of the tournament, because that's a point scoring edge. That's if those guys have the profile of tight ends who can be one of many guys you need. It's not like you can only win with them, but they would provide you with a much needed spike week at a low scoring position and help you get through the pod. He scored wide receivers, touchdown eligibility, could easily be on the winning lineup of the entire tournament, almost like regardless of, what else you're doing. So I don't want to overthink that edge. That to me is one of the better edges that we have in this type of fantasy football. And so I'm going to keep drafting those guys. But when I get to the Sam Laporta line, where you're good, like in Hawkinson and those guys, and then after them, I think to open the tournament, maybe part of my May strategy will be to avoid the middle class of tight ends, because I'm no longer getting the structural advantage of that elite. Truly, I mean, it's not like Hawkinson, of course, can have a spike week, but we don't have like this confidence that he's a cheat code, that he's not even a tight end. Like Hawkinson's like the most tight end. He's like as tight end as it comes.
They made Iowa tight ends, and it's not George Kittle there. It's TJ Hawkinson in the encyclopedia.
So I don't think he's like a cheat code. He's a good player. He's part of an offense I want to invest in. Not to say I would never take him, if I have Jefferson setting up stack, whatever. But like, he's not. If I reduce the importance I place on that position, I'm also saying like, with the advantage that those guys are giving me is they're giving me kind of the certainty that I'm going to like get some points at tight end, and I don't have to like worry about figuring it out at the end of the draft. But what if I want to figure it out at the end of the draft? What if like figuring tight end out at the end of the draft is what keeps me from drafting a ton of Evan Hall or whoever else, that just doesn't add anything. So if I build back to front and I say I'm going to take like 3 tight ends in the final 5-6 rounds, then taking, a David Njoku is actually like hurting my overall strategy
Even if
there.
he's good,
Um,
even
even if he's good,
even if he's good,
right? Because
because
it
you're
cost
giving up
me,
something.
and it cost me in a range where like Njoku and these dudes are actually in the range where we probably can get CLV. Where we were take like that's like, or just some of the underpriced guys, but like a Chase Brown. But a Chase
Mhm,
Brown gave you CLV and the hit because he was going in like the 120s before. So it's
mhm,
like, okay, so instead of taking Chase Brown, instead of taking Rico Dowdle, who opened up in like the 140s or something,
mhm.
and they move up and then end up being good picks. I'm taking a tight end in that range because I don't want to have to worry about the uncertainty at tight end later. But the uncertainty at tight end is less. It is certainly uncertain, but less so than at running back.
So that's why I
And
pulled.
even at wide receiver a little bit.
That's why I pulled this up to just give a frame of reference from last year. I know this is last year's ADP, so this column here is that what tied in, and then this column is the actual pick number. This is it's closing ADP, so it's not perfect. A lot of these guys, frankly, moved up. Like Isaiah Likely was cheaper at like a fast forward a week at that time last year. Isaiah Likely was a little bit cheaper, but like look at what was available back here and look at how confident we were in most of these guys. Not all, most of these guys like having a real role. Probably the starting tight end running almost all the routes that the tight end would run on that team. All the way down. Now Gesicki was it's a little easier to remember. Like I don't want to bring up he shall not be named, the other Bengals tight end. I actually liked Eric All a little bit more, and he tore his ACL
Yeah.
again, which is what opened things up for Gesicki. But if you wanted, but I mean, Gesicki was still going to run routes, right? So, and he's on the Bengals. Cool. Zach Ertz, tight end 31, picked 213. Tucker Kraft, who is apparently, we've learned is just a fucking baller. Like,
Does not
is
matter
just
if he tears his bicep. He had a torn bicep last year. I was like, this
he's
dude's not even
insane.
going to play.
He's
Yeah.
absolutely insane.
Wild.
Like and then again, if you want to swing, right? Theo Johnson was back here. Jatavian Sanders was back here. That's like about it. Michael Mayer. Dude, we can hate on Will Dissly all we want, and I will. But like,
Dude,
I don't
I
know,
took
man.
him in some DraftKings drafts. It felt so gross. I was like embarrassed. Like he was one of those picks I like didn't tell people that I occasionally took. Like,
right.
And it was always stacked and everything, but it was just like, yeah, I've drafted Will Dissly
But
a couple times.
it was the tight end 25. So it's like that's
Yeah.
not great. But again, the tight end 25, he was not hurting you, and he was slightly helping you. If you put Will fucking Dissly, who is the grossest pick, but that's a tight end chaperone, brother. That's a tight end chaperone. You're like, what? Will Dissly is gonna carry my crappy, but then I don't have Evan Hall, I don't have Roshan, I don't have whoever here. It's like, what would you rather have? Like we're
yeah, because
have
you're
to understand.
you're trying to
You have
just
to make some
match.
kind of trade.
Yeah, so it's like this. Give me, go up a bit. Because Janu was here. Janu was the one guy.
Yeah. I mean,
I
John
kind of swung and missed here on a decent amount of these guys. I was into Juwan Johnson. I was into. Thankfully, I was not into Dulcich. Actually, I was into Theo Johnson. I was not into Ertz. I wasn't really into Gesicki. I wasn't into Kraft. I wasn't into Parkinson. I was somewhat into Sanat, which sucked. Otten, I liked okay. So, it wasn't like this amazing hit rate that I had down here, but there were hits. And Janu obviously was a smash, tight end 5.
Yeah.
But you get Otten, right? Tight end 13. I'm taking that tight end 13. I'm subbing it up for like
a nuclear week for a tight end is like very, very rare. 3 spike weeks is like 21% of the time you played. He had spikes. Now, like that was some injury related stuff, but that's also part of the point is you have a guy who can benefit from that.
Yeah, so you get that, and then you don't have to spend the pick on Njoku or Ingram or one of those dudes, and that becomes a running back or whatever, and or whatever else you didn't have to spend this pick on. I do wonder, what do you think about quarterbacks this late? Because that would be another way to go. I don't know that we have them this year.
Yeah, I think that's not what I went to. I think that's the problem is maybe in the last couple of years I would have said yes, because we did have some of those guys, and Drake May was a little bit funky last year because he wasn't going to start the year. So
And
then
Knicks.
how did you build your room? But
Yeah.
Darnold, obviously Darnold became available, so maybe he's not relevant here. But yeah, May, Knicks, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Russ. So like that Brissett.
What do you think about? I think we might have them this year. Like, what about the May bet, especially early? And it won't be as good as the May bet because the prospects will be much worse than May. But what about taking Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, maybe Shadur Sanders with a profile that says this guy won't play until maybe the end of the year,
and take them with your Drake May or with your, like get one take him
as it's a quarterback 3,
mm-hmm.
In a way of, and I'm most interested in Milroe this way.
Yeah.
And then I'd be second most interested in Dart and third most interested in Sanders, because the idea is they're just a spike. Same as I would be doing for like a running back. I'm hoping to bank a weird spike week, and I don't care. I actually don't care if they contribute to my starting lineup before the playoff week. So Milroe makes a ton of sense because he's got the scoring profile. But Dart honestly has an interesting scoring profile too. He runs a little bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So those two dudes, as like, let's say Rodgers signs with the Steelers, they draft Milroe, and Seahawks take Dart. So neither one's starting for maybe ever, but at the end of the year, you could be looking at. But you know what? Let me change it. It's not Steelers for Milroe. It's Giants. So you get Giants. Ooh. So it's like, and with Seahawks, they basically have a 1-year deal with Darnold. So you're feeling like pretty good that maybe you'll get starts, but it's far from a guarantee.
And take them as a quarterback 3. So we're maybe using our last couple picks here on, we could combine this stuff, get one of these tight ends, and then get a Milroe, and get a Milroe. And now I've at least moved up into a class of running back and wide receiver that I'm shifting my risk mainly onto this quarterback. But I have cover in my quarterback room at a position that, is just very projectable. Like I'm getting quarterback points. The problem with the running back stuff is, especially if you draft 0 running back, like the first team that I showed, it's like there's also risk in the 10th rounders, right? And the 8th rounders. Zach Moss was an 8th round pick and useless. Raheem Mostert, 8th round pick, useless. Kendre Miller, on down the list. I mean, every single running back I drafted was a whiff. And so that's the inherent risk of 0 running back in best ball, but it becomes elevated, like you said with the late round chaperone thing. But the cheaper my running back room, the more I need some of these guys to hit, like in some meaningful way. And I'm shielding myself against that in the time of the draft season when it's like, I don't want to say a certainty that they won't hit, but it's much more likely that I'll be able to pinpoint. That it's much less likely that I'll be able to pinpoint the hits at running back and at wide receiver back there. And so it's like, you just can't have a team that takes on 0 risk, because then that's when you do like what you mentioned. You just draft like these total boring route runners it's like they actually have risk. It's just not playing time risk. It's like, they're just never going to do. It's the same 0 risk. It's just, it makes you feel better. It makes you feel
better. They provided 0 value. Is that a problem?
Yeah. Their risk was not that they were going to get cut or never play. Their risk was that, like, how the hell are they ever going to score any fantasy points, actually? And so I don't want that either. So you have to take some form of risk on right here. That they're late round picks for a fucking reason. They're all some form of risky. But why can't I shift my risk to the positions where I can shield it better, quarterback and tight end, right? I can shield that risk to where it doesn't hurt me so much. And like, is it less risky? Like, I don't know. We'll see. We'd have to see where Milroe lands, right? We'd have to see exactly who the late round tight ends are. But at least at tight end, I'm not sure it's any riskier, and the position is lower scoring, and quarterback is more projectable. So like, I kind of think that we're onto something here with like, how do I find ways to move up into higher tiers of running back and wide receiver? And it's like, I probably got to shift my risk to the last tight end and the last quarterback I take on my team, I think.
Yeah.
Or I
So what
can
it's
do
like,
that. Not that I have to. I can.
no, you have to, but it's a one tactic. So you could do like a 2 quarterback, 5 running back, 7 wide receiver, 1 tight end build. Okay. That's your build through 15.
Say that again.
So through I should have said this part first. Through 15 rounds,
Okay.
your build is 2 quarterback, 5 running back, 7 wide receiver, 1 tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're done at running back and wide receiver.
So
your final 3 picks,
some form of hero or superhero running back or whatever, however we want to classify it, right? Like you have solid running backs.
You have solid running backs, or maybe you even went like 0 running back, but you just like you were not relying on pure dart throws. So you're actually pretty good at 5. You have, a couple veteran, stopgap guys and like 3 high upside swings or something. And you're like, okay, I'm solid. And then, I mean, and maybe you go 6-6. Maybe it's like true 0 running back. You only take 6 receivers or something. But you're just at the end. You're going. My final 3 picks. I'm going to take a quarterback spike week play and like Dart or Milrow, and then I'm taking 2 more tight ends to close that out.
So this is so funny because now I'm going to share another one because I wrote about this a while back. I think this is 2022, maybe 2023. I called it the best ball triple option, and you're almost describing it, right? So I wrote about it and did a bunch of these drafts, and it failed spectacularly. Now I pivoted. I think this was Kyron year, and so if you didn't attack Kyron and Puka with your last couple picks, like RIP, right? It was over.
It was over.
And so this strategy does not do that, but maybe it's more of a timing thing. So essentially, it's a slight pivot on what you were talking about, but the premise is really what we're talking about here. I want to move to where the draft is the riskiest, and the running backs, and especially now the wide receivers in those late rounds are just so much worse bets than we've ever really gotten, specifically the wide receivers. But also like the really good running back picks, like, they're kind of like, even like, right, Bucky was in like the 180s or something. He wasn't going at 212. Like the Kyron thing and Jordan Mason thing. And again, we weren't going to get those guys at this time of draft anyway. We just have to throw Kyron and Jordan Mason out the window. How did I do that? It was like, how can I shield myself from that while still getting it like good running backs and enough wide receiver firepower? I was like, why don't I just push all my late picks to the onesie positions and just be like you said, I can get a May and a Geno and a Milrow, right? And then ideally what I talked about with the triple option specifically was like, then how do I correlate those guys with their tight ends and like really take this bet on these late guys a whole step further. Right now, that doesn't work with like Geno, obviously. But like, I think in that year, I was like, I'll take Derek Carr, and Juwan was late. And like,
which actually worked that year.
And I don't remember I think it was Tannehill then who failed, but Tannehill and Chig, because Chig was late, right? And it's like, do these little.
He got benched for Will Levis.
How would you? Pretty good run out. Great pick. But you see what I'm saying is like, I think there's little ways to like manipulate some of these things that we're talking about, and like in early drafts. I'm not saying do specifically this, but there's like, I actually talked about here. Oh my God, look at this list. Geno, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff. So I listed every quarterback that was. Shout out Sam Howell. Max. This is a funeral parlor of quarterbacks. But right, like Jordan Love was back there, man. Like Kyler was back there. That was the year he was coming off the injury. Baker
Love was on the winning team that year.
And if
Love
was
on the winning BBM team.
Baker, Otten then, or Love, and whoever the freaking tight end even was at that time. Like there was a bunch of different ways to go about this with this premise that we're talking about here. And all it really was doing was saying, Look, most of the time your running backs and wide receivers are not just like misses, they're stone zeros. And it's
Yeah.
really bad to have we know it's bad to have stone zeros. How do I avoid those? It's like, well, the quarterbacks and tight ends aren't going to be stone zeros. Are they going to be the biggest hits? I don't know. But there's usually some kind of hit. So like I think it's a way to kind of have my cake and eat it too, is like what you like exactly what you were describing. And like here's an example of all those quarterbacks that were back there, right? Like Gino was fine. Like Goff was great. Jordan Love was great. Kyler's good pick, right? CJ Stroud was a rookie that year. Would you like to have had late round CJ Stroud instead of your shitty
Huge hit.
17th round? Yeah, like, so there's, even when it doesn't appear that they're necessarily there, like we're trying to talk it through, like they kind of do pop up still.
They
And
do
maybe
pop up.
May's a good time to try that out.
Yeah. That's an important thing to underline. It's like the whole thing I'm saying, if you were to do something like, 1 to 2 quarterbacks early and then save, 1 to 2 quarterback spots late and then maybe tack on a couple tight ends late. So, maybe you could even say the core part of the team is like, like a 1-1-5-7-1 or something. And then
Right.
you're maybe adding on a couple late dart throws at each one. Or you could mix it up so that you are taking 2 early-ish tight ends but still doing a dart throw, or 2 early-ish quarterbacks. So you don't have to like live in that. I don't know that I want my like the heart of my quarterback room to be made up of dart throws in my early drafts, especially this year, because I just don't think the dart throws are going to be that good. But
that's the problem.
I am interested in saying what if I do a Jalen Milroe dart, as opposed to a Jarquez Hunter dart or something, like what
Dart
if I do that?
Is a funny
Right.
turning into a pun here.
Yeah. I don't want to,
dart.
I'm not really doing that now. I'm not really drafting Milroe now because I don't know the situation. But if he was on the Giants and you're telling me I need to spend a 15th round pick on him as a quarterback 3, okay. And then maybe, and I close it out with, or 16th round pick, and then I close it out with 2 tight ends. And I haven't had to draft a running back or receiver since round 15. That has some appeal. It's a low information strategy though. So like you're cut your ear out, you're listening for a Puka. Did a Puka nugget come through? That kind of thing. It's like Ricky White. He's making noise in camp. It's like, okay,
please.
I'm taking some Ricky White stabs, But why just like swing? Like I liked this profile and I've heard nothing about him and he was a 7th round pick or something. I'm not going to draft him until I hear anything.
Why swing to swing?
Kind of what I'm thinking. Don't swing to swing.
If you walk up to the plate and the guy's thrown 8 straight balls, the pitcher's thrown 8 straight balls, it's like a home run, you got a couple runners on, right? You're down by 2. They walk 2 straight. Now, if you hit a home run, the game's over. But why swing to swing if the guy's never going to throw a fucking strike? Right? Like if he hasn't thrown a strike, he's not going to throw a strike. There's no need to swing. Wait till there's a strike, right? To swing on this thing. It's like just stand there and wait for him to throw. That's what everybody does. Like if a guy walks up and swings on the first pitch after 8 straight balls, the manager's going to come out and motherfucking like don't do that. But that's what we do. That's what I do. I'm like, nah, I loved Ricky White, right? Oh, Tez Walker, Aguilar stinks and Bateman stinks. It's like I can swing on Tez Walker, and it's like we're just the percentage chance that those guys even are a relevant NFL player, nonetheless a relevant fantasy asset, is so low in May, right? Those guys in May, that like it's low in low information times. I shouldn't say that. I like your in low information times. Like we should pivot our strategy a little bit, I think. And I haven't.
And also,
quite frankly, I haven't.
Right. Yeah. And I pivoted to the most boring thing imaginable. Of like, oh, I'll just take God, who was I even taking? I think I blocked it out.
Patrick. I call it the Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
Everybody
the Yoshi boss is kind of the go-to, but that's not even who it was because it was too early. We didn't even have the Yoshi.
We didn't even have Yoshi news. We didn't even have
Yoshi was the news guy. Yeah.
That's why I was taking him. He was on the Bengals and we got news. He wasn't drafted. We got news. I kind of liked him as a obviously he didn't do shit as a rookie, but like I kind of liked him. And then we got the Darius Slayton. Yeah.
Yeah. who I've, Darius Slayton is a underrated
He's a
player.
little better than he's closer to a chaperone than a
He's
total
closer
home
to a
run
chaperone, but he's not. Yeah, he's not a full
Not
chaperone.
quite. He's like 8-year-old chaperone, not full.
He's precocious.
Not 6.
But he's too young to really give responsibility to. But he's precocious, and you trust him more than you should.
he might be able to he can put something in the microwave.
Yeah,
right?
he can heat up some food for sure.
Yeah, he
For
can
sure.
do some spaghettios for the kiddo.
He
Or
uses
something.
Mr. and Mrs. Very. Yeah, he's got good manners.
That bit is too good. Shout out! What was it? Artillery Frost?
Artillery Frost.
Shout out to you, man. That's gonna live
so
on
good.
in my brain forever. Absolutely,
it's so good,
incredible. So, we talked about a lot of the. I think we talked about a lot.
Well, let me just say real quick that because I think what I just wanted to touch on is that if you go into, I want to be clear, like when I'm talking through this idea, first of all, I literally just am like thinking out loud. So I want to like review if this actually makes sense more and dig into it. But
I hope they know that that's everything that we talk about on every single one of these spots is like, there's no prep. There's, what do you want to talk about this week? What about like some tournament strategies?
These are words I didn't know I was going to say until seconds ago. So, so let me, don't hold me to it. But even with that, like when you go into a draft room and you're like, all right, I'm going to try to take care of running back and wide receiver before the final rounds. Even with that as the goal, like I probably will accomplish that, a third of the time or something. Like I'm not going to be like some, running back or receiver falls to me in round 17 that I just didn't expect to be there. I'm not going, I have to take Jalen Milroe as a dart, even though I don't need a third quarterback. Like I'm honestly not going to do that. So flexibility would still, but I do like the idea, talking it out of being less dependent on that group of running backs and wide receivers that's going to close out these May drafts.
Right.
Because it's not just, you mentioned with like Tez Walker, what were his odds of actually being something, but what are his odds of being something in combination with like an Evan Hall, in combination with a Jermaine Burton and in combination with a Roman Wilson. You guess like this is a parlay card that we're filling out that we are not allowed to adjust, that we don't get to see if we cash until December. So just like putting less on myself as a drafter, getting less things right. That would be the reason to kind of go in and have some flexibility if something falls to you if you're going, hey, this is a 14th or 15th round running back that's available to me now in the 16th. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take that guy for sure.
Right.
But with, I like the idea of, I really like the idea of trying to find strategies that reduce zeros in this low information period when I know in the summer people are going to be lapping me with, the sharp drafters are going to be lapping me on kind of the information, and they're going to be taking players that not only I was not drafting, but no one in my rooms was drafting. Mm-hmm. And when we show up, when the early drafters show up against the late drafters, we're going to be at a disadvantage in that. But what if I've got just sweet value on a bunch of the best players all summer, and I actually landed the plane? I actually paired them with guys who aren't just tanking the rest of my roster.
Yep, exactly. You also talked about like the flexibility part of it. I just wanted to reiterate because I got asked. I did. I'm big into the NBA and NBA. It's NBA playoff time, so there's NBA playoff best ball. And I was doing some drafts earlier, and somebody asked, like, "What is your how do you like to construct your rosters?" Right. And like, from NFL play, it's the same shit from NFL playoff best ball, right? Like how many from this team, how many from this, how many from this conference? Do you ever do one-offs? Do you do all the same questions for the NBA? And I was like, well, in the total ideal world, right, I would have it this way. Because I would give myself as many permutations of the teams, so like I could win with 3 different finals matchups or 4 different finals matchups, or, give myself a chance to win with as many matchups as possible. But I was like, when you get into the room, just like doesn't work that way. Like, you have to fill the correct positions, and you have to build a team that even though you have the matchup, like it could actually win, right? Like, Is Samaje Perine plus
Right.
Will Shipley plus, whatever. Are they real, Jahan Dotson, are they going to beat Saquon teams? Like, no, of course not. So like you still have to be flexible. So I think that's an important thing to put on all this is like, I'm not going to, you see me in a draft, next week, like I'm going to be thinking about this like quite a lot, but there's still just going to be times that you have to take some of these home run swings. I think what you said was perfect, where it's like, I want to kind of lower my exposure to that cohort of players, but
Yeah.
even more so than that, I want to restrict the burden that is on them on my teams. I don't want them to have like I don't want to have good seasons and good weeks, especially at the right time from these 16th, 17th, 18th round wide receivers and running backs. Like I don't want to have that. I want it to be the cherry on top. I don't want it
Yeah.
to be the whole the actual custard or whatever. Like I want it to be the thing that sets me apart, right? Because I'm drafting now for all this ADP value, and I'm getting the best. I'm getting the best Bucky teams. I'm getting the best Chase Brown teams. I'm getting the best whatever. That's how I'm winning. That's the thing that like, okay, I got there. Oh my God, Evan Hall did start right in week 17 or whatever. Like now that really helps me, but it wasn't what I needed. I probably could have won without it. I want it to be the cherry on top, not the whole Sunday.
It would also be interesting to go back and look at, because I've done some stuff with rookies and looking at like the rookie hits for best ball and everything. But it would be interesting to do like a study on closing line value, probably at running back more so than receiver, because we're really focusing on, we know that there can be kind of bigger changes at running back, but
Yeah.
Which running backs had generated a ton of closing line value? My hunch is that it's related to depth charts and just how open the depth chart was, and that if it's a really open depth chart coming out of dynasty season, people like me will be like, this guy kind of sucks though. So
Yep.
Ollie Gordon on the Raiders, and they don't really have anybody else, and it's Raheem Mostert. Someone like me would probably have a bias to be saying, well, sure, I'll take it. I'll take a crack, but I really would like it at a discount because I just don't think this guy's profile is that strong.
100%.
And he was a day 3 pick. I mean, he's still a day 3 pick. I'm not really comfortable spending more than maybe a 12th round pick on him, 11th. I'd do 11th. And then in August, he's a 6th round pick.
Yes, 100%.
So that's like what I think if we're trying to chase some of these profiles that are going to rise in value, it would be like a Michael Carter was, very expensive. I think he was an 8th or 9th round pick when he was a 4th round pick to the Jets because
Yep.
it was clear he was the only guy they had, and he was the only guy they had, and he had a pretty solid rookie year. Dameon Pierce was a big riser. And that was obvious. It wasn't clear maybe that he was going to get the opportunity he got right away, but it was clear he was the only dude on the depth chart.
Mm-hmm. He's a great example of I didn't love him.
Yeah, I didn't love him at all.
So I did what you said. I'm like, I see it, but I'm like, I can't get myself excited about him.
Yeah. Dudes with profiles that we like without opportunity directly in front of them will be there for us later in the summer, I think. Like
Yes.
Bucky never rose. Braylon Allen never rose.
Braylon never rose. He was like, no one cared because it was like Brees is there, even though we know
Brees is there.
He's the backup. It's like nobody cared. He just like stuck in the 180s all year.
Tyler Algier never rose really.
Nope.
I think you're I mean, he wasn't a rookie, obviously, but there's like it's that kind of
Ray Davis. I don't think Ray Davis really.
Not really. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit.
But not like you're talking about with these other guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So like big wide open depth chart would be. Ironically, Chuba would be an example of kind of what I'm talking about. Where like it turns out that depth chart was open, and so the news became this depth chart's actually open. But yeah, I wonder. That's probably another thing I'll try to focus on in these first drafts is let me chase these depth chart these dudes who I don't actually think are that great, but are on that just kind of hit the landing spot nuts, which kind of goes against my natural inclination, which would be to not be
Talent,
like a
talent over opportunity.
well, yeah, and also just like don't chase everyone knows that. Everyone knows that they have opportunity in front of them, and so don't just like blindly chase the opportunity when these guys aren't even that good. But everyone doesn't know that, I think is what
Yes.
they're
It also takes
the
time.
all the drafters are gonna be knowing it way more.
Right.
You
It
know?
takes time. It takes
It
time.
takes
You
time.
can
It
still
takes
you
time.
can like everyone might know it and will act on it, but it's a trickle, right? It's not a waterfall. It's like this slow trickle down. It's like
Yeah.
it still takes 2 or 3 weeks before it's like, maybe a month. Who knows? Like depending upon the use case. It's like in your first week, in 2 weeks, you could still be drafting these guys at really good values. And even though like us and every other YouTube video is like, yeah, this guy's, was a third round pick and has a whole lot of opportunity. It's like, it still takes 3 weeks for him to get to more of an efficient price.
It might take 2 months,
Yeah, that's true.
especially if this I'm almost pulling like a Liam here where you're kind of using the industry's biases against itself, where like I know that if Ollie Gordon lands lands on the Raiders in the 4th round, that like I'm certainly not going to be, I'm not inclined to tout him. That's like kind
Oh,
of
geez.
gross.
Yeah.
It's sort of a square. It's like it feels square.
This is
You're like,
Pepe. We're going full Pepe Sylvia on this.
yeah,
Pepe,
yeah,
Pepe. I got all this Pepe. Everybody keeps talking about Pepe.
yeah. I just, but then again, as soon as it starts to maybe feel like it's getting priced in a little bit, or I have other things that I can do, I don't. It's not that I'm now into like bad players, but the getting the cheapest. If I know that this dude is not, there's like no way that this price lasts in the 14th round because he's got a huge opportunity in front of him that is only likely to become more and more obvious to the rest of my competition over the course of the entire tournament. Why can't I just draft him?
Yep.
I'm just going to draft him. I have a hard time actually clicking that player, and I think
too.
I just need to do it because, dude, if you're gonna bank CLV, like you're gonna bank a bunch of like meaningful CLV, like 7 rounds of CLV, maybe.
You also don't need to feel. Then you don't feel the need over the course of the whole
to
summer
chase later.
to you're not chasing your tail. You're like, look, I know I didn't love this guy, but it's also like some humility based drafting, just being like, look, I don't love this guy, but if I'm gonna like, it's possible I'm wrong, right? It's possible that he is better than I think, and so if that possibility, I don't want to go all in on that possibility because I do want to trust myself. But if I'm going to have to be humble at all, I want to say, well, let's at least get my chips in on the good price, right? Like I know he's going to rise. Whether those people may be wrong and I may be right about that rise, but so if I'm going to bet on myself being wrong, let's do it at the right price. I don't want to do it once he's already risen. Now I'm never going to take him, right? Once he rises, now I'm just going to have zero.
Now I just have to be right that this guy sucks.
I don't want to have to be right. Yep, exactly.
I don't
It's
want to
kind of
have
like
to be
the
right.
late round guys. It's like the late round guy conversation. Like I want to like give myself the best, as many chances, get as few things right as possible, right? It's like I want to give myself as many chances to win, and it's like if I'm right about this guy, cool, no sweat off my back. I spent a 14th round pick on him a handful of times or whatever. But if I'm wrong and I faded the 14th round pick and then I continue, I'm not going to take him in the 7th or whatever. It's like, well, now you're just wrong. Like, and it buried, like it could bury you. You go from an awesome season to a terrible season because of one stubborn decision.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I go against a team with the guy who's burying me that got him at a bad price, not a good price.
Exactly.
Because I have 0.
Exactly. Because your one best team is what's going to win you all the money. And so if you're wrong, that guy, let's at least have the best version. I want to have the best version of that team that I was wrong about.
Yeah.
Can I posit one more that's like somewhat similar to this like roster construction thing that we're talking about?
Yeah.
It's not just for the early stuff, but I've been thinking a lot about like zero running back and everything, but the landscape, everything that we talked about, just how crazy the wide receiver prices are, but also how awesome like the first round wide receiver is like the sickest thing. Like just I don't care what pick I have. Like I get excited to pick any of those wide receivers. They're so awesome. And even a lot of the early round guys. But we don't love this rookie wide receiver class, like in terms of overall expectation. I'm not saying no one's going to pop from it. I'm just saying Matthew Golden as a top 20 pick doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence, and then everyone after him is not awesome. Travis Hunter, who knows what he's going to do at wide receiver. And we got wide receivers aging out that we're still drafting them. But like a lot of the best wide receivers are aging out. Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, right? These guys are Devontae Adams, who knows how much longer he's still good, but who knows how much long. Tyreek is aging out. Like those guys are Keenan. They're scary bets, right? The bets that we wouldn't normally like to make, but we have this wide receiver firepower thing. We have the elite tight ends that we think are like an edge, just like you said, a point scoring edge in Bowers and McBride and also Kittle. And I'm like, God damn, like, can I ever take an early running back and feel and this, now we add this thing we just talked about and feel good about it. And I've been thinking about like, why don't I draft just a lot more running backs, like quantity on a team, right? Like the days of 2-6-8-2, like, like that kind of structure on underdog feel like, I don't know, like my 8th wide receiver is probably real bad. And my, and what is he doing? When I drafted BTJ and Malik Neighbors at the 1-2 turn, and then, whoever, Rashee Rice and Calvin Ridley and Chris Godwin are on this team. I'm like, what is that 16th round wide receiver really doing for me? And I know the strength of this rookie running back class. I know, all those backups that we talked, the Algiers and the Braylons and all those backup running backs are really appealing to me. And then we just talked about like, okay, well, maybe the last couple rounds, like for tight end or like a quarterback dart or something like that. I'm like, so why don't I actually, maybe I am going to take 6 and 7 wide receiver teams and 7 and maybe even 8, running back rooms. Like I'm not hedging against the zero risk that we talked about, but I'm like leaning into, I know that zeros are coming, so at least give me more, right? Like I know the running back zeros are coming, so how do I shield against that without doing some of the stuff we talked about there? It's like, well, if I have more of them, like give me min 7 running backs on every single team and make sure I lean into the early round wide receivers a little bit more. I know I'm going to have zeros, but I got more bullets in the chamber, even though there's some blanks.
You have zeros at a position where you can. The nice thing about running back is that so I have kind of two minds about it, because the nice thing about running back is that when you hit on a running back late, you often, although not always, you often have like a dude now,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like Chase Brown would be the perfect example. You get him in
Kyron and Chase Brown. We talk about DFS a lot. When they got the jobs, were the RB2 every week projected, right? So when you go into a DFS slate, for total points on a DFS slate, only Saquon would typically be ahead of Chase Brown, and Christian McCaffrey was ahead of Kyron Williams. They were so like when you talk about the dude, like projects for 22 points every single week.
Yeah, and so you're just like that. I'm good there. Like I'm good. Like I don't need, the second you hit one of those guys, you don't need the other running back spots. All of a sudden having a guy where you're like, well, this guy could be this is like a underpriced handcuff that I got late. You're like, I don't care. Like I don't need that dude. So you could make two cases. One is that like even in zero running back rooms, you can potentially, like the highest upside rooms would be ones where you only took like 5 running backs, and maybe you have a Charbonnet and a Mason and a Chuba and a Chase Brown, and you're kind of done, so like, that's only 4. But like you don't need,
add Bucky on there, and you got the all-star squad.
Yeah, there you go, Bucky, boom. So you're done. Like you don't need, if you're like, and what about another dude? Like I don't, put it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. You've already hit it running back. Anywhere. Doesn't matter. So that's like the reason not to. But the reason too would be to like, if I told you had that room and it cost you Braylon Allen, or if you had that room and you could sub out one of them for Tyrone Tracy, but you also had to take on
Kendrick.
I don't know. Kendra Miller. Yeah, perfect.
Just a stone zero.
Who probably is on 90% of those rooms. Um, yeah, so Kendra Miller, you know, that's, or maybe it's Kendra and Braylon have to come along for the ride so that you can get 4 of those guys.
Wouldn't you
I
do
would
that?
take that every time. I would
Yeah.
take that every time. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. It's like, what's realistic versus, and how much upside do you actually need? But I think you still, there is a kind of point where you are accepting, you know, you're kind of accepting zeros. Like once you get to 7 or 8 running backs, you're like, you're either accepting zeros or you have running back points that you don't need. There
Yes.
is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's probably a limit around 7 in an 18th round draft. I don't think I think at 8, you're almost locking in waste on the roster, like significant waste that will hurt you.
And that's because the other side of that could be that you built a room that doesn't necessarily have all of those hits, but it also doesn't necessarily have all of those Kendras that are stone zeros, right? It might have Algier and
Is
Braylon.
Kendrick's our name for a zero now?
Yeah, he's fucking terrible. fuck Kendra. God, just a gaping hole in the middle of a bunch of my best ball teams. I still kind of think he's like not bad when he's on the field, but there's something wrong. There's something wrong with that dude. I don't know if it's his mind or his body. I
You wouldn't be
Wesley
this mad
Snipes.
if deep down you didn't think he was good.
That's correct. That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
I thought he was
Yeah.
good, and I still think he's talented.
You still think he's good? Yeah.
I think there's a difference. I think he's talented. Okay.
Right.
Like there
Right.
are talented players and there are good players, and those are not. That's not an apples to yeah. And he got screwed by the coaching staff for sure. Somebody recently shared that they must have not seen. It was who's the interim coach? Darren Rizzi.
Yeah.
That after he took over the job, they asked him about Kendra when he was on IR, and he was like, "Yeah, I think he's been healthy for a few weeks or whatever." And I was just like,
I remember that.
Why would you bring that back up to me now? Like, I'm over it. It's all good. Like, and then somebody was still bringing it back up.
Dude, Dennis Allen hated his guts.
Dude, Dennis Allen is jeez, man, that dude's the worst. But anyway. It's like you can have, like, there is also a middle ground to that too, right? That like, okay, I didn't have to carry 3 zeros with my 4 super. I took 7 running backs, right? I got 4 big hits. And then I took 3 Kendras. Kendra's the 0. I took 3 Kendras and 4 big hits. But there's also this, like, I had Tyrone Tracy and Tyler Algier and Ray Davis and I don't know, I'm spitballing, right? DeAndre Swift and like whatever. And it's like no one there. You're like, I definitely got that dude. That none of this is that dude. But then Bijan gets a concussion, and you're like, okay, I got that dude this week.
Right.
James Cook misses a game, and I'm like, I got that dude this week. And you're like, there's like kind of that, like, Gretsch has always called it like layering, right? You give yourself out. The more running backs you take, the more outs you give yourself to this layering effect, where it doesn't have.
That's very true.
Chase Brown and Bucky. Yeah. Like, you would love to have Chase Brown and Bucky, but you have outs to this other way to win too.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can kind of like have. I've done stuff like that too in the big board, where I've have teams that have like Algier and Benson and Corum and maybe a Jalen Wright or a Ray Davis. I'm just like taking a bunch of the handcuff running backs and hoping that even and that would say in the big board I will do like 7, 8. I don't know that I've done 9, but like 8 running back rooms because I have the extra rounds to play with. And
I love it on.
I also think everyone's going to have zeros. I mean, the big board's so different because we're all in a low information environment, and so I'm less scared of like showing up with zeros is just not going to matter as much because everyone's going to have zeros.
It's all about the hits.
Yeah, just give me the hits
in the big board.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it's actually, even though they're like 4 days apart, from the last draft to the first draft, it's pretty different. You have to think more about your competition having a lot more information we still, I mean, we have more information now than we did in February, and in some cases, like a decent amount more information, but still, some of the information we have is fraudulent. We think
Right.
that these guys should be way higher than they were or way
We
lower,
got
but we actually don't know.
we got news, not necessarily information, right? Somebody
Yeah,
reported
yeah, yeah.
something, but
Well,
we don't know how much
yeah,
how much it's
right,
going to
right.
matter. I'm not saying that they were like lying. I'm just saying they were reporting something someone
Yeah,
said, right? Or what have you, or someone's interest in the mock drafts and all
totally.
that kind of stuff. Is that guy actually going to be the backup running or the starting running back or
Right.
the wide receiver too? Like we really don't know
Or
that.
even the concrete thing like Najee. Najee goes and
Yeah,
I was drafting Najee. I was freaking touting Najee. I mean, come on.
I know.
You
He's
guys
like one
made
of
me
the
tout
first
him.
people you touted. He's one of the first players you tout.
Look what you've done to me, market.
Yeah, you
Thankfully,
guys.
and I
It's
said at the
all you
time,
guys' fault. Yeah.
I don't want to have to draft this guy when he's going like in the 7th round or whatever. Now he's in the 6th round. So I'm just
He is the perfect example of what we just talked about, though.
yeah. Yeah,
Took your Najee
he's sort of the
medicine.
take your medicine. He's gonna rise. It's that attitude, but taken to probably more rookies that land on rookies with bad profiles who land. And dude, there's a lock to be guys like that this year. It's gonna
100%.
happen. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you could combine that. You could be like, I'm taking, I'm gonna try to build more like what about 3663? Do you have any
Yeah,
interest in that?
I do. That's what that stupid like triple option thing was.
Oh,
But I
okay.
get, but it's that has some weird quirks to it. You know me. I love a good gal brain thought experiment. But the 3663, I think, is more relevant. I really don't love spending that much on the onesie positions, but if we translate it more into some of the things that we were talking about before, where I'm really attaching like dollar guys at the onesie positions and avoiding like right my lack of information issues that I have at those other positions, it becomes a lot more viable when I get to August.
No.
It's something that I don't really want to do, but I think again we have to adapt and we have to think about like for the next
Yeah.
month for the next month are the best 16th through 18th round picks wide receivers. Probably not, so why would I keep like just saying,
At
well,
least
I
not
have
until rookie camp and
yeah,
OTAs, and we start to get a sense of like, hey, this dude's really making noise or whatever. That like I really expect this guy to stick. But I mean, it's noisy. The summer is noisy, but I will say, like, at no point did we have a single bullish report on Roman Wilson. We
mm,
just didn't have any bullish news on him at all. We didn't really get any bullish news on Tez Walker, and I looked for it.
I got a Tez story. We got a guy in our Discord, Rodney is his name, Ravens fan. uh Shout out Rodney, he rocks. Went to Ravens camp because we had all been drafting Tez, and I was heavily invested into the Ravens last year, okay, which worked out fairly well.
Worked out well.
Outside of fading Derrick Henry, why draft the
Well,
guy who's going to
let's
score the
not talk
most
about that
points?
part
Why should the guy who's going to score the most points on this team you think is going to
because you got to
score a
draft
million
Zay.
points? Yeah, exactly.
Got to draft Zay Flowers.
Gotta have Zay. Goes to camp.
God.
Harbaugh's answering questions from like the fans and stuff like that, and he asks him about Tez, and he said, "Who? Who?"
Oof.
He said, "What about Vontaze Walker? Is he working in with the wide receivers? Who working in with the wide receivers?" And we were like, "Oh no." Like he reported back like as soon as he got done
Oh
to the
no.
Discord, and we were all like, "Well, burn those fucking bags, because he's he's definitely not active, even if he makes the team." But to your point, that's the thing is like we got no news about it, and so it was pretty indicative. Usually, you at least hear something,
Yeah.
something at all.
Yeah, it's again like there's going to be lots of noisy stuff, and sometimes there's hype, and there's stuff. There was some bearish stuff about like Bucky's role and how he wasn't a good, 3-down pass protecting type or whatever, and Rashad
Well, he's
White was a
not.
workhorse.
He's
I
not.
mean,
He gets
he's
run over like a fucking bowling pin in
he's good
pass
enough.
protection, but
He's good enough in the early down stuff.
he's so good at everything else. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
right. Yeah. So the news stuff is noisy, but I do think if you take an attitude of this base rate for this like day 3 or even round 3 wide receiver is that they are not going to matter. And then you allow yourself to become more bullish from that point.
Yeah.
Um, then you can start to, then you're kind of like waiting for more, like you're waiting for the news to start adding more players to your draftable late round dart throw list. And then you can kind of go, especially as things
Hmm.
pick up, you can kind of be like, I'm taking this guy now, I'm taking this guy now. And I've tended to do, I know it would be like better for portfolio building to evenly spread out your picks so they're all on the, but I don't know who these people are yet, so I can't. What I'm saying is I'm going to get all excited about some wide receiver that's making noise in rookie camp because I'm generally not taking, if I'm not taking that many of these rookie dart throws in round 16, 17, 18, and I'm trying to go more tight ends there and finish up at wide receiver a little sooner, then getting excited and mixing that guy in is a way that I'm kind of mixing up my builds, and I'm allowing myself to get excited about the next time I hear a little nugget, and I can get, then I'll start to mix in that guy, and I'm kind of slowly like bringing in more players to
Right.
the mix until finally I'm just not really drafting tight ends in those final rounds anymore because now we have all the running back news and I've got a big bunch of players that I think are really good targets, but they came in they came into my draftable player pool because not because I liked them necessarily, but because I heard that the team who drafted liked them.
Right. And we actually get some of the wide receivers now. Again, I'm
Or
not
that
saying to
or that they're
draft.
second year players or third year players who are taking jobs over. Doesn't have to be
Yes.
rookies. Yeah.
Also, you get the De'Ami Brown or frankly Noah Brown. Both, you get like these
Yeah.
random guys that you were like, I was not going to draft De'Ami Brown, right? But then at the end, you're like, I don't know, he's starting in the preseason. They say he's a starting outside wide receiver. It's like now at least it's not the 6-year-old chaperone. It's like, I kind of like De'Ami as a prospect. Now he has Jaden Daniels. He's getting a shot to be a starter. Is he a zero? Sure, most guys are, but I've gained information now about a slightly more appealing profile that I can be like, I'll mix that guy in now. Right at
Yeah.
the end, we actually
Yeah.
get some. We do actually get some of those guys pop up even at wide receiver a little bit later. You mentioned Yoshi. Everybody's opinion of all these types of guys is different, but they do pop. Like we gain information across all different kinds of stuff, and so you mentioned I was thinking like it would be great, of course, if I could like perfectly diversify. Right, I have all of these guys spread across all these different teams and paired with every single player, but we also have to draft at the time we're drafting the best team that we can possibly draft at that time, given the information that we have. And it's like the portfolio part of it can't outweigh drafting the best team with the information that we have at the same time. So, I'm willing to forgo that part of it. I'm a big portfolio guy for sure. I'm a big, player combo guy, stack combo guy. I'm into all that kind of stuff, but it's not only one thing. Like I can't draft whatever Jaguar stacks if I don't have the information on the Jaguar stacks to draft them with
Right.
whatever. I have
Right.
to use that information. I can always come back and get them and look, oh God, I didn't get 11th round Chase Brown on that team. I had to pay 9th round price for Chase Brown for my Jaguar stacks. Like I'll be okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be okay. You can have both of them.
Another thing, I've done this in the big board, is just like you do if there's pieces of a cheap offense, I'll just try to overstack. So this with the Jaguars, I have taken De'Ami Brown, Gabe Davis, and Parker Washington
Mm-hmm.
all together, and I kind of like it. I kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it because now I would like it more if it was post draft, um, because if they draft somebody, that's
Yeah,
going to look
there's no more
worse.
risk. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no more risk. Um, and you are trying to farm some production, but I've taken Troy Franklin and Devon Vele. Um, with Knicks generally, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something where like, I know this feels gross, but we know that Sean Payton is going to just like rotate in a bunch of receivers, and it's going to be frustrating. They're going to probably draft somebody, and the same thing's going to keep happening. He did this with the Saints. These dudes are going to kind of rotate around. But if we're betting on Bo Nix to take this at his price, to take a big step forward and everything, great offensive line, maybe they draft a running back. We kind of, they're going to draft a running back. Maybe they draft one in the first round.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you kind of like, that's kind of goes back more to the gross wide receiver dart throw thing I was talking about to start this conversation. But I do think, if at least if I'm overstacking it, like if I'm I'm betting on this offense and there's cheap pieces of this offense. And so, like, for example, if the Titans take some dart throws at wide receiver, I guess those would be rookies and therefore more exciting. But I'd be open to kind of grab, trying to just give me a bag of the cheapest offense I already bet on, as a way to close it out.
Mm-hmm. I did that. Now, again, everything's always, you have to caveat, because it happened to be the Puka Kyron year. But the thing that I did with that was also I was taking Tutu, and sometimes I was taking, I think it was Higbee that year. And I was just like, look, I mean, my highest exposure players.
I hate to tell you, you have some Van Jefferson teams. You'd go back, you'd find some Van.
I'm sure. But it was just like, I want the young guys, but just give me this whole Rams thing. Because it was like Akers was expensive and Kupp was expensive, and the entire rest of the Rams offense was freely available in the last rounds, and they weren't even like a crappy offense. That was Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay fucking offense, playoff team. And so
this is how I feel about the Jaguars right now. That whole rest of the offense, Brenton Strange and whoever the other two receivers that are starting are completely free, basically.
Down to be Gabe Davis. Which the recent quote of or whatever it was about apparently Gabe's not even running with the ones. It's Diami and or I forget what the quote was, but they didn't mention Gabe amongst the wide.
They didn't mention Gabe. Yeah, which is not good. That's not definitely great. Bad. Yeah, great. I would characterize that as bad.
But
yeah, I don't want to. Yeah,
I mean, he's not going to not play the entire season. And, guys get hurt, whatever. Like, that's also part of it. Is like, teams play for wide receivers, so you're not.
Yeah, and I'm also just like, I'm spending. I'm like, if Jaguars slot receiver plus Jaguars outside receiver cost me 3 picks at the end, and I have Lawrence, cool. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, that doesn't seem. It's like you're not necessarily. Like, you're turning a zero, like you're accepting more zero risk, but you're also like, if the original bet on the Jaguars pays off, you're also increasing the chances that you don't just have a 3. What about 3 risk? It's right. Like one of these guys is actually going to score meaningful points because they beat out the other guy. So that's where I don't mind doing stuff like that. Depends on kind of the team and what I'm trying to unlock with it, but. That's one thing where I think some of the stacking, building out the bet on the team where you're like, I don't have to get everything right. I don't have to get every single player right in the last rounds. I just have to get Jaguars receivers underpriced. That's a much easier bet than picking which Jaguars receivers underpriced and then, which dart throw, what rookie on the Titans is going to pan out or which, like I don't have to, I just do one bet. Jaguars wide receiver and tight end. Jaguars, not Brian Thomas, equals underpriced.
Right.
And just do that.
Reminds me of, I've thought a lot about over the last several years, we evolve in this game and you come in and you think you're just going to win with all your player takes, right? And your team takes and all that kind of stuff. And what you were outlining is how I kind of think about players and teams really ultimately where I think we should, whether you derive it yourself, these are your internal takes that you came up without the help of anyone else, or you're listening to content, or you're just using someone else's rankings or whatever. You're going to have players and probably teams NFL teams that are like I always call them like core assets, right? When I go into a season, I got these things, whatever it is, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 things that I'm like, these are my edges from a player and team perspective, right? Like the market's wrong about this, or I'm right about this, or et cetera, et cetera. But then like most of the rest of the shit is like there's probably stuff that's zeros. We need to change the name of this. We always used to call it the Thielen list because we were like, we're just never drafting Adam Thielen. He's a zero. We got to change the name now. I don't know who's going to carry that torch from Thielen, but there's also guys, right, where you're like, nope, I don't think that they deserve to be a part of our portfolio. Everyone else, which is like 80% of the player pool or 70% of the player pool, is somewhere in the middle, where it's like, I don't know, man. Picking between Diami and Gabe, is that really my edge?
Right.
Is that my edge? They don't know. The Jags don't know. Like I always tell
Right.
this story. Jimmy Butler is one of my favorites. Actually wearing a Warriors hat right now, which feels weird to say Jimmy Butler on the Warriors. But he did a podcast a long time ago, and they asked him, about his coming up, because like he went to junior college, he went to Marquette and was a nobody. Like he was on a really good Marquette team, and his coach told him in practice one time, because he like took the ball and like tried to go take some guy off the dribble and missed the shot. And Buzz Williams was his coach, and Buzz called Jimmy over and he said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And Jimmy's like, "I'm trying to score." And he said, "No. When you get the ball, you pass it to the good players. Like pass it to the good players." He's still like Jimmy Butler, a fucking Hall of Famer, right? But so Jimmy just thought like, I'm just gonna grind it out and play defense and be a role player. He makes it to the NBA, right? He becomes an all-star, etc. He goes back home, and like his friends and the people from his small town community were like, "We knew it. We always knew you would make it, right?" And Jimmy's like, "You did? I didn't because I didn't fucking know." He's like, I was playing junior college basketball, and I was like, am I even going to go to? Am I going to continue going to college after this? Like he's like, I didn't realize I was ever going to make it this far. So he's like, that just always stuck with me when people are like, I know better about Gabe Davis and the
Yeah, for
Diami
sure.
battle, because I'm just like, the Jags don't know.
They
Diami
don't
doesn't know. Like nobody knows. So I think about those situations where I'm like if you felt conviction about Chase Brown over Zach Moss, cool, got it. But like not every situation is that. Most of them are the Jimmy Butler situation, where it's like, I don't know, that could have gone one of two ways. Jimmy Butler could have turned into nothing, or he could have turned into this. It's just, sometimes things happen, and I want to apply my player take. I want to press my edges where they really exist, where I feel really, we'll find out if they are real, but where I like feel the strongest. I don't want to press the wide receiver 3 for this team, the RB2 for this team. Like I did that with like that was the Evan Hall thing. I'm like, that wasn't a fucking edge, you idiot. Like that wasn't an edge. You didn't have an edge with Evan Hall, but you thought you did, and you tried to press way too many individual player and team take edges. And I'm trying to be much more cognizant of that this year. And I think it's a lesson that I've learned, and honestly, probably a lesson that a lot of people could learn. I think is that not every player, every team, every situation is an edge for you.
I agree. And yeah, just being like, I'm gonna try to, limit the number of things I'm trying to get right by, whether it's tactically within a draft or structurally, being like, I think my edge this season really boils down to maybe this group of player takes, or this kind of these structures, which I think are undervalued or whatever. One thing I think kind of big picture about this season is that it is very likely that this is a changing of the guard at running back now. We've kind of talked about this running back, the current running back crop, like aging out, and they've aged out slower than we thought they would.
Fucking
Now,
Derrick Henry.
zero running back crushed for a couple years, but last year was a good year to take running backs. And so maybe they'll prove us wrong again. But running back prices are up a bit, and you have this incredible class. And so I do think so at the end of the drafts, I'm focusing more on stuff like, onesie positions, maybe building on existing stacks, and then focusing on like trying to identify the 14th, 15th rounders that are just in 6 spots that are not going to be available later. And I'm like going away in all cases, kind of going away from just like the fun I'm right about this guy picks. I think I'm going to be pretty I'm right about this guy early on in the draft, or maybe
Hmm.
not like every single pick, but that would give me license to be like I'm going to be I know that these guys are going to make noise this summer. These guys are better
I like that.
than people think. So if there's let's say Scattaboo is a late second round pick, but lands in a subpar situation, or um, Travion Henderson lands in kind of a more crowded backfield than we were hoping, then I can bet heavy on Henderson's talent emerging over the course of the year. But then I'm pairing Henderson with like some fairly safe types of late round plays and structures that where I'm not in that Henderson bet isn't dependent on me also finding May 18th round league winners.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly what we talked about. It kind of comes all full circle, right? You have the luxury to make those kinds of bets, and the risk of them not paying off doesn't hurt you as much if that comes to fruition. But you also, even when they do hit, if you have to bide your time until the hit starts to come through, the Pearsall was really late, but just like the Pearsall-esque kind of Amon Ra, more like Amon Ra. I know we're talking about a running back, but you get it, right? The like slow trickle to late season like explosion, like it's fine. It's totally fine because I
Yeah,
didn't need 17th and 18th round guys to be the ones that are backfilling. Like I'm
right.
good. I've created that luxury for myself.
Yeah, but I actually even mean more early. I mean, Jonathan Brooks would be an example of this that just exploded in my face. But like the Brees type of bet that I made a couple years ago in the 4th round, I'm like, this dude's just way, way, way too talented to go in the 4th round. And if he takes a few weeks to come on, so be it. That's fine. Um, Tedero McMillan, who I'm very comfortable with in the 5th. I could see him falling into the 20s and like falling into the 6th or 7th round. That would be like one where I'm just like, yeah, I'm like not doing the most exciting stuff ever in round 17, but I have a bag of 6th round Ted McMillan,
Okay.
or
Mm-hmm.
like, taking these profiles that I am really excited about, but especially at running back, and just going like, look, this talent is going to win out over the course of the season, but I'm going to be able to build in a way that allows that bet to actually succeed. This is going to be an advancing team that has the ability to use this score when this dude's peaking. Um, so if I'm eating my vegetables with the late round picks, and maybe even taking some earlier round running backs that are looking like yeah, okay, you know what, the Texans didn't draft a running back. I guess Mixon's fine in the 4th. I know it's gross, but like if I take Mixon in the 4th, what does that allow me to do? It might allow me to get 8th round Travion Henderson because he's in a murky spot. You know,
Right.
that's but yeah, finding ultimately my goal is still going to be let me find these dudes where you're like, oh my God, how did you assemble this team? And you're never going to do that by just like taking boring safe picks every time. But I do think there's certain pockets where you can, especially at the end, and then maybe early on, accepting a little bit more. I mean, certainly I wish I did this last year. Like if I just taken a little bit more Kamara and a little bit more Mixon and a little bit more Jacobs, I would have had a lot better teams, and I could have made use of those guys better than a lot of my competition who was just like, oh, well, what you do is you take all 3 of those dudes, and then, you also take Henry, so it's like, I think I can build pretty good 4th round Joe Mixon teams if I have to. If you make me, I could do it pretty well, I think. So early in May, maybe actually taking a little bit more of that projected volume um, and then like license to really like that would be kind of the final thing. Like, okay, I'm willing to take some more boring running back production, um, as long as it's not too gross, and then I'm betting on profiles that I really, really believe in with most of my other early round picks. And then I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done by round 15. My team's basically built, and I tack on a couple tight ends and call it a day.
I love that one, and it combines that plus another one of my big things. And God, it's always so frustrating, like you said, when you look back and you're just like, that was like slapping me right in the face, and I could have done this so easily. And the Mixon thing jumps out because I didn't do Kamara, but I did. I think I had like 6% Mixon or something like that. So I wasn't like,
I had a little Mixon, yeah.
It wasn't like going crazy, but he was.
Because I would take Mixon instead of Rachaad White. I thought Rachaad White was pretty bad.
Yes, I agree. Basically, honestly, it wasn't anything profound with Mixon. It was just, I don't know. We all seem pretty goddamn confident in this Texans offense, and I was. For sure. I mean, I had the boatloads of Nico and Tank, and I didn't even like Diggs, and I forced myself to take Diggs. I'm like, I'm forcing myself to take Stephon Diggs because I love this offense so much, and their veteran
starting running back,
running back is in the 5th round, and like you already have 4 wide receivers. Maybe like maybe like draft him some, like it wasn't anything good. It was actually like I'm a moron, and I just had an epiphany that I was being dumb. But the other great thing about, like you said, that I really, really want to do better is building teams with those guys, so building the way we build with players that we don't normally build with and are always built in the opposite way it's always the running back bros build with Jacobs, and they got 3 running backs through 4 rounds, brother. And it is high tea time, right? Joe Mixon. What does a Joe Mixon team look like? Well, it probably has Derrick Henry. It has Derrick Henry on it. So that's that's what those people like.
One wide receiver through 5 rounds.
They got right. They're Jacoby Myers is on there, and Adam Thielen is on there, and Tyler Lockett is on there, right? And like I know who comes preloaded on like these Joe Mixon teams. I'm like, I can tell myself that he's a fine pick, and I can build Joe Mixon teams so different than anybody else is going to do them. Totally. I know the people that build like me don't draft this dude, and so I'm like, that's the thing. And I'm so mad at myself because I learned it within zero running back teams. Shout out Billy Jones. He wrote an article for us about what zero running back teams look like. And it's funny because I can't figure out who's to blame for this, but like Jaylen Warren was like on basically across normal teams, right? He's owned the same as everybody else is. On like the robust running back teams, he's like significantly lower owned on the running back bro teams, and he's the highest owned running back on zero running back teams in Best Ball Mania. And it's like, and and it was just like, again, this epiphany where it's like, okay, I think zero running back is the edge. I don't necessarily think, I'd like Jaylen Warren, of course, but I'm like, I could draft zero running back teams with different combinations of, so like
for sure
it is the zero running back year, but I could build different permutations of
totally
that. And so I'm really trying to do that like in all these different funky ways, right? Like I'm going to draft some of the white. We talked about Ridley and stuff, like draft some zero running back teams with Calvin Ridley. The zero running back bros don't like Calvin Ridley.
I've been drafting Ridley.
I know you've ruined that one for us, right?
Sorry.
But like last year I was drafting Devontae Adams, right? Like Devontae Adams, 2nd round wide receiver that everybody, like even the wide receiver bros are like, feeling when the wide receiver bro feels squeamish about a wide receiver, that's
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill. A couple years ago, DJ Moore, right? Like last year, Terry McLaurin was the boring 4th and 5th round wide receiver, and this year
boring
right,
3rd round.
Boring. Yeah, except I think anyway, you get the point. When like identifying all that kind of stuff is like that you're just taking advantage of your opponents. You're not you don't even have to be right about shit. Your just opponents need to like not put the right players together.
100%. Yeah. That's I like the non-Jaylen Warren zero running back teams.
Just take Najee. Don't take Jaylen Warren. Just it's like
you don't even need to take Najee though. Just you don't have to do that.
Well, you're the Najee guy now. I figured out.
Come on.
Right. You're Pat, noted Calvin Ridley and Najee Harris and Adam Thielen truther is what we've learned this spring.
That was seasonal affective disorder. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna flip. Yeah, it's gonna flip.
Once it's summer, I'll be back.
I think when we come back, I did I say this on last show? I have jury duty next week, so we'll see. I don't know yet if I have to report or whatever, so I gotta call in. So we'll see how next week looks for my content schedule. I know you guys got the
Just talk about
NFL.
this, and you will not be selected.
Oh, I've been telling people this. FBI, if you're listening to this, don't get me in trouble. I've been telling people that I want to tell them, because this would not be a lie. I want to tell them that I'm like obsessed with true crime documentaries, and like specifically the ones where like, you know, some guy's wrongly jailed, right? The guy's been in prison. The guy's been in prison because some cop, you know,
it's a tough watch, man.
It's terrible, but I don't know. I'm disgusting. Like those things, like those things, like it makes me mad, and I think it's like, you know, the injustice is like I'm hate watching, like doom scrolling. I'm like hate watching, you know, whatever. But I feel like if I tell the lawyer that I don't believe in the system because I've watched so many true crime documentaries, that probably should disbar me from being on the jury. But we shall see. When we come back, it'll be
we'll find out on Monday.
We'll find out on Monday. When we come back, it'll be best ball. Really, the heart of best ball season. We'll start to get into all the fun stuff. Probably some of those players to attack, like Pat was talking about. But you guys got what? The draft coming up? Draft show on Chip Chasing?
Yeah, Ship Chasing. We're going to be doing a live draft stream. You're welcome to join.
I'm going to try to join. I messaged Pete back, and I'm going to try to join. But like I said, my next week is a influx for me. I should be fine in the evening, but you know,
if you're doing night jury duty, I think. Yeah.
Well, I do have a you know, I have like, if I'm gone all day,
you get called for night court. What's going on here?
If I'm gone all week and I come home to the wife and I'm like, by the way, I'm gonna, you know how those streams turn out. I'm like, she remembers she remembers the NFL draft streams where I'm drunk at 2 a.m. and we're talking about, you know, all these players. So I just wanted to make sure to
that's fair.
Cross my T's and dot my I's.
Yeah, we'll be on Chip Chasing. And then I mean, I think Best Ball Mania is going to launch Monday after the draft, so we'll be we'll have rankings up, ready to go. I'm updating as the draft comes in over the weekend. So yeah, check it out.
Can't wait. We'll catch you guys hopefully next week, unless I'm convicting someone of murder or something. We'll find out. We'll see you guys next time.